Good morning, everybody. I'm Roger Baird. I'm the president of Harp Enterprises, and I'm new there. I've been working there 31 years, and I was talking to some of my friends that are in my age group, and it's kind of funny because people that are my kids or younger, they don't work for a company for 30 years. They move from company to company. So when I got out of college at the University of Kentucky, I decided to get in the election business, and it's been a strange ride ever since I've been in it, especially when we went through the election in 2000 with the Hanging Chads in Florida, if you all remember that. But today my job is to move very quickly through talking to you guys about what you're supposed to do on Election Day. And if you have any questions as we go, I'll be glad to answer them for you. If you don't want to ask questions during the meeting, just see me after the meeting. I'll be glad to work with you one-on-one if anybody needs any extra help with the voting equipment, and we're just going to get right into it. So if you would, for the time being, let's get our sample ballot out, that big 11 by 17 sheet of paper. And I just want to point out a few things on the sample ballot. They were at the back door. We'll get you one, but we're going to keep moving. On your sample ballot, precinct workers, if you'll look at the top left-hand corner, you'll see the three parties that are running: Republican, Democrat, Libertarian. You notice the Republican's a log cabin, and the Democrat is a rooster, and the Libertarian, somebody said, "What is that?" And I couldn't really figure it out from looking at this. It's a Statue of Liberty. So we do have three parties, which means that we have three straight tickets that are available to voters. It doesn't mean that all parties have every single race that's going to be there, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The first part of your ballot is what we call the federal ballot, the U.S. Senate race and the U.S. Congress race, and that's running countywide. Then below the U.S. representative in Congress, we have a state senator's race that's also running countywide. Then we have state representatives, and fortunately or unfortunately, Oldham County is split up into several different districts, so not everybody will have the same state representative's race. And you can see underneath, not on top of, but underneath, it shows you the precincts of where those state representatives races are running. Then over to the second column, all of the stuff that you see on the second column, all the way down to where it says all precincts, that's your county ballot that will be running countywide. Then we have all of our magistrates and constables, and those are broken up into districts. And we have the maximum by law here of 8 different magisterial districts. You all can see all the precincts. If that is on the ballot in your precinct, everybody will be allowed to vote for it. And then over to the right-hand side, you have the nonpartisan judicial race. That will be on every single person's ballot. Some of you all have school board races. You can see there the school board races. For example, the first one is down below where it says all precincts on the right-hand side. You have school board district number 2, and then you have school board district number 5. And this is something that you all need to be familiar with the ballot, is you notice that it says continue to next page. This is going to be a 2-page ballot in most precincts. So what you need to do is be familiar. If voters can't find what they're looking for, remember there is a second part to the ballot on the back. And this is where we have all the city races. We have several on here. That's where they're going to find those city races when the voter comes in to vote. Precinct workers, as Julie said, not everybody's going to see a ballot this big, but believe me, it is a big ballot. Now, I was just thinking, if some of y'all have been serving as precinct workers for a few years, and I have no idea if you have, but in most counties, precinct workers serve many, many years over and over again. We appreciate what you do. And the last time that I did the election school here was probably 15 years ago. So some of y'all may remember I have been here before. I'm back. And I'm sure I don't look any different, right? I'm the same,
Excuse me,
same as I
Roger.
was.
Can I interject one
Yes.
thing? For those that have been around a while, I just wanted to make sure you all know, do you all remember Carl Sayer? He worked the polls forever. Carl Sayer passed away last week. So Carl served as a poll worker for many, many years. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew that and keep his family in your prayers. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Roger.
It's all right.
If I don't say it while I'm thinking, it's gone.
I got you. We're going to talk about many different things, but my goal is to try to help you know where you can find stuff on Election Day if you need it, and try to leave some information with you that'll be helpful to get you through Election Day. And as Julie said, when you wake up election morning, you need to get going, because we need for you to come out to the precinct as soon as you get out there, no later than 5:30 in the morning, please. And if you wake up and you're going to be late, or if there's some kind of emergency, don't hesitate to call her office and let them know what the situation is so we can get a replacement in. And as Julie said, we really don't have very many replacements or no replacements, so we need everybody to show up. If you'll take the State Board of Elections Precinct Election Officer Guide, it's this one here, and if you'll open it up to the first page, that's going to be the main thing that we're going to go through during the meeting. Precinct workers, the Precinct Election Officer Guide that's been furnished to you by the State Board of Elections has a lot of the election laws in here, and it's a guide to help you find things in case you forget what to do or if you need reference on how to get to it. So if you open it up on the table of contents, and what I really like about it is it's laid out pretty good in the fact that you can just see what you're looking for with the content of the different things in here. For example, on number 1, you see the responsibilities of all the precinct election officers. And, you know, I was doing a school the other night, and by the time I got down to number 3, some guy on the first row, he said, "Man, I see 35 different things. You gonna go over every one of these things?" I said, "No, I'm not." So we're gonna move pretty quick here. But if there's some reason, if you read the section number 1 on page 4, and you don't have to turn to it, if for some reason when you read that, if you think that you are not qualified to serve as a precinct election officer, please let Julie know. But we think we're in good shape.
And this year I'm going to overlook everything. If you've got a pulse, you're working.
There you go. We need you. And if you'll look at item number 2 there, the special duties of the precinct election officer clerk, it tells you that you can find out all about what you're supposed to do on page number 6. I am not going to read that whole section to you, but if you're the precinct election officer clerk, the main thing that I want you to understand is you're responsible for all the paperwork out at the precinct. Now, the paperwork is not any different than it was before. It's the same, so you just need to keep up with everything and make sure that everything is properly filled out and documented. Precinct election officer clerk is also responsible for taking care of the precinct roster sheet. Now, if you'll turn over to page number 22, and I want you to look at it, and I apologize for the fact that some of the copy was very light this time, but I think you can understand by looking at it just what we're trying to cover here. Precinct workers, the precinct roster is going to be different this election than it was in May. Now I want you to think about what I just said. I got your attention. It's going to be different in the fact that this is not a primary election. This is a general election. Remember in the primary, you had a section for the Republicans, you had a section for the Democrats, you had a section for all other parties. It's all going to be together in one section in alphabetical order. Party affiliation is not part of the deal in a general election. If voters are properly registered to vote, party affiliation doesn't make any difference. So if you look on page 22, where you see the sample of the precinct roster, you just find their name. For example, this first name here, and I don't have my cheater glasses on, I think it's Abney from my memory. If the person's name is so-and-so Abney, you just go to the A's and find that person's name, and you'll notice to the right-hand side is their birth date. So kind of size them up and see if, you know, if they were born in 1970, but it looks like that they're a lot younger than that. You know, you might just want to think about identification purposes, and we'll talk about that. And then there's a barcode in there. You don't need to worry about that. And then there's a party affiliation code. You don't really need to worry about that either. And I'm going to stop right here, precinct workers. If there's something that's incorrect on your precinct roster sheet, it's not the place to fill it out here. It's not the place to make those changes. The changes should be made on a new voter registration card. So if there's a change, just hand them a voter registration card. For example, I was Mary Abney and now I'm Mary Smith. Okay, that would be where you would need to have a new card. And then in the middle there, you see their signature that is upside down. That's the best thing in the world, because this blue precinct roster book, which has all the signatures in it, you don't have to turn it around and around all day long. It's going to work for you. So in this roster book, clerk, you're going to find all kinds of stuff, but right now we're talking about the roster. You're also going to find a supplemental roster, and you're also going to find a list of voters that have voted absentee and so on. So you need to become familiar with everything that's in the blue book. Then precinct workers, and this goes for all precinct workers, you need to identify each voter that comes in to vote. You know, you may have heard about this. It's been a big thing in the news in a lot of different states, voter ID. And my wife, she was asking me about it the other night. She said, what is this voter ID? What is this voter ID? Well, I don't want you all to get confused about what they do somewhere else. Let's think about what we're supposed to do. If you'll go back one page to page number 21, precinct workers, you all have to identify every single voter that comes in to vote. And you can do it in this state by personal acquaintance. And if it's somebody that you know by personal acquaintance, any one of you 4 precinct workers can identify them, and whoever does it, darken in that little oval for PA, for personal acquaintance, and then go over to the far right-hand side and put your initials. If you don't know that voter by personal acquaintance, you are required to ask them for an ID. That can be a driver's license, that's the best one, but they don't have to have a driver's license. It can be a credit card, an employment ID card, which is OI, other identification, and so on. Make sure that you identify each voter that comes in to vote. Now, precinct election officer clerks and all precinct workers, there is several more things that we're going to cover on paperwork, but if you are the clerk of the election, make sure that you're familiar with everything that's in that blue book so that it's properly filled out. Now, if you'll get back to the table of contents, and on the table of contents, the next section there is the precinct election officer judges. On page number 8, there's a whole section about precinct election officer judges. Again, I'm not going to read that to you, but I want the judges to understand that we have a Republican judge and a Democratic judge. You guys are the ones that have the special duties of operating the voting machine. So I want all precinct workers to be familiar with this, but judges especially, you all need to remember that it's your job to get there and get the voting machine set up, and the operation of the voting machine all day long is what you're supposed to take care of. So let's talk about the voting machine just for a minute now. We get to the precinct election morning at 5:30 a.m. First thing we want you to do is start getting everything ready. Get the voting machines ready. You have 2 voting machines. Nothing's changed from the last election. The 2 voting machines is we have what we call the E-Slate, and then we have what we call the E-Scan. The E-Slate or the E-Scan, either one of them, you just pick one that you want to set up first. If you want to set up the E-Slate first, it comes in a bag just like this, and it's got a seal on it. You just open up the bag, and inside the bag you're going to find 2 sets of cords and a pink slip with different numbers on it showing you where it's been certified by your County Board of Elections. Go ahead and take the unit out of the bag and take the bag and put it in a safe place now to the end of the day. And then just set the JBC down on a table. The JBC stands for Judges Booth Control Unit. And set it down on a table just like that. And then on the back of this is a red tip. And I like color coding because it just makes it a lot easier. And that red tip, you just plug this into the red. And then you take the black tip and you go over to where your little booth is that your E-slate's in. And in the back of the booth, this plugs into the back of the booth. Not to the back of this tablet, but to the back of the booth. So you just plug it in. Then once you've plugged it in, then you have one black cord that is the electrical cord, and then you have the battery cable. The battery cable just screws in here in the back in case the electricity goes off. I'm going to leave it out right now. And then you just plug in this JBC. When you plug in the JBC, we have instructions for you in pictures and in color. It's a 3 or 4 page handout that you've got with your supplies here today. But for right now, I want you to think about how you can make this a whole lot easier by just following the directions on the screen. You don't have to read the directions on that piece of paper unless you want to. If you follow the directions on the screen, it's going to tell you exactly what to do. So once you plug it in, it's going to come up and it's going to say, assign your booth. Well, we only have one booth, so we walk over to that booth. Now remember, this is telling you to do it. So you walk over to that booth and it says 01. To assign it, push enter. So you push the enter button. Once you do that, you come back to this JBC, the Judges Control Unit, and it says press the button that says done. So you press the button that says done. And then it says, well, press the button that says next. So you press the button that says next. Now again, all this is on the screen. Now what you can see now is you can verify the numbers that's on the pink slip where you have the count number that everything is on 0, and then it has a protective count number which tells you how many times this machine has been voted since the day it was put into service. We get these calls on election morning all the time, and precinct workers have reported, we came out here and opened our machine up and it's already got 348 votes on it. That's how many times it's been voted since it's put into service. It's like the odometer on the car. Then there's a screen that comes up that says print the 0 tape. Now precinct workers, you only have one shot of doing this, and that's at the beginning of the day. So at that time, you just push the button that says print the 0 tape. And at that time, on a green tape, your printout's going to come out. And judges, you just sit there and watch it and make sure that all the counts are coming up on 0. And when you see that it has, then tear it off, and all 4 of you precinct workers sign it, and go ahead and put it in the envelope for the election returns for the E-slate. You'll have a special envelope that says election returns for the E-slate. Then all you have to do now is push the button that says open polls, and it's going to ask you for your secret password. Y'all remember it? 6 ones. Great memory. So you put in 6 ones. Once you put in the secret password, then it's going to say, do you accept that? And it says, okay. And now the polls are open and ready to go. We didn't have to read the sheet unless we wanted to. You can. If you want to do it that way, and that's a good system for you, that's great. But I'm telling you that if you'll read that screen and not get ahead of it, it will tell you exactly what to do. And of course, everything's ready to go right now, and what would be on the E-slate right now is a place for them to put their numbers in. Then we have the E-scan. Most voters are now voting on the E-scan. However, I want to point out that the E-slate can be used by any voter, and especially voters who have a sight impairment. They can put headphones on and listen to the ballot, and vote unassisted. So we have the e-scan. The key to the e-scan is in their supply bag? Roster book, okay. So you take your roster book and you'll have a key to the e-scan, and what you're gonna do is, first thing, to get in the e-scan is you're gonna have to break off this yellow seal. And when you break off that yellow seal, you'll unlock the door of the big tub and you'll open it up, and inside there, you're gonna have a tray in there that's gonna have a power supply in it, and it's going to have all your ballots in there. So go ahead and take
Our ballots
everything.
won't be in there.
We
Ballots
have,
won't be in
we
there.
have a ballot bag that's inside the machine.
The ballots will be in the ballot bag inside, thank you.
And in your precinct bag, there's a side cutter, because you can't just break those seals. You're gonna have to,
Well, I didn't know if you are using the real thick ones.
yes,
Okay.
yes. But really, try and remember that key is in the roster book. I get a lot of calls that,
It's on that green sheet.
that you can't find the key. It's in the roster book, okay?
All right, precinct workers. Yes, sir.
You had a green slip pop up after you put in the secret code.
I had a what?
The tape went past.
The paper
What do I do
tape?
with that after I'm done?
This paper tape right here would go, I took it off a little bit too early a while ago. It would have come out with a zero tape. Good eye.
I'm not gonna tear it off until I put
That's
the
right.
secret code in.
Good eye. I got a little bit too, going too fast.
Okay.
Okay. Precinct workers, once you have cut the seal off and open up this door, got your ballot bag out, everything that's in here, and also there is a privacy screen that goes in to the e-scan itself, where you can have secrecy on the ballot. Then we're going to lock the Is that good? We're going to lock the door back, and we're going to put a blue seal on the machine. And I can't stress this enough, precinct workers. You all, once you lock this door back, you cannot get in this tub for any reason unless you have a special order from your county clerk's office or Board of Elections. So there's no way that you're going to open up this tub now. It's off limits. Once you do that, then you go ahead and unlock the top of the machine. You take this box off the top of the machine. It's the same key that takes that off. Put this in a safe place till the end of the day. And then on top of the machine, you're going to have the verification sheet where you need to verify all the numbers that are on here, the name of your precinct. You have a special seal number on here where the little memory card is. And then you're going to plug the voting machine into that power supply that you found inside the tray inside the machine. Once you plug it in, there's a little switch on the back that you just flip it and turn it on. And when you turn it on, you're going to watch the screen. It's going to tell you what to do. Same thing as the other machine. You watch the screen and it's going to do the work for you. As soon as it comes up, there's an hourglass that takes about 1.5 to 2 minutes, and when it comes up, the first thing it's going to say is print zero tape. So at that time, you just push the button that says print zero tape. Once you print the zero tape, judges, again, you're huddled around the machine. You're making sure that all of the candidates' names are correct on there. You're making sure that all the counts are set on zero. You can also look here in just a minute to see what the count number is of how many votes the machines had put on it since the date was put into service. And of course today, for the public count, all counts should be on zero. Then on the paper tape itself, you should have a place for the signatures. And so I won't take it off too quick like I did a while ago. And then you have a button that says Open Polls. Now again, this is not anything that you have to look at on the instructions if you are looking at the screen. On the screen right now, what it's going to do is it's going to ask you to enter your secret password. Do y'all remember what that is? It's all ones, right? Once you put in your secret password, it says to push the button that says accept. Once you push the button that says accept, it says it's ready to scan the ballots. So that's all you have to do. So now you tear off the paper tape and all 4 precinct workers sign it and put it in the special envelope for the returns for the e-scan. We're going to put some more stuff in there by the time we get finished. We're ready to vote. We've got both machines up and running. Let's say that the first voter that comes in to vote is going to vote on the e-slate. They have asked for the e-slate, or there's some reason that they need to vote on the e-slate. Then what would happen is you poll workers, all you have to do is push the button that says add a voter, and then you would push the button that says print, and this voter would be given a secret code, and they would go over to the booth. This code is 2267, and all the voter has to do, and again, if they're sight impaired, they put the headphones on, they can do it unassisted, and they put in their code 2267. When they put their code in, all those party emblems come up. All the things that are on the ballot that they're allowed to vote for is on there. They vote for whoever they want to vote for. If they change their mind, they can go back and deselect. When they get finished making all of their selections, a summary screen will come up showing them who they voted for. If they want to go back, they can. If they're finished, they push the red button and they walk out. They're finished. Next voter comes in to vote, and probably most voters will be voting on the e-scan. The e-scan works great. You have privacy booths set up. Precinct workers, I've got good news for you this time. You remember how hard these ballots have been to tear out? Well, we got a new machine. They tear out real easy this time. So you would issue the voter the correct ballot. The voter would then go over and vote for the person that they were allowed to vote for. Took my pen somewhere.
Underneath your stuff behind the machine.
Here?
On the back. Put it behind the machine.
Thank you. The voter goes in, they get their ballot, and they darken in the person that they want to vote for with these little boxes. And then the voter simply goes over to the e-scan and puts it in there. Either way, it doesn't matter, upside down, it can go in either way, and they just simply put their ballot in the machine. And it falls down in that tub, and that's why you all can't get in it, because it's a secret ballot. Next voter comes in. If they vote on the e-scan, you issue them a ballot. This voter here, though, has a problem, because this voter has actually messed up their ballot. And maybe they didn't do it on purpose. They just accidentally did it. So this voter gets finished voting, and they put their ballot in the machine, and the scanner says, no, I'm not going to take that. Okay, at this point, what do you precinct workers do? Say, hey, hand me that ballot, I need to look at it. No, no, no. At that time, precinct workers, you just simply say to the voter, can you take your ballot out and look at it and see if perhaps you voted for more than one person in a single race. If the voter looks at the ballot and they say, yeah, I've messed it up, and I knew I did, then ask the voter to fold it up just like this. Don't hand it to you. And then the voter has a special envelope called a spoiled ballot envelope And this spoiled ballot envelope, you tell the voter to put it in that envelope, seal it up, and in the side pocket of the machine, you have a special place in the back of the machine where it says spoiled ballot. So it just goes right down in there. Okay, now you got another voter, and they're even different than the last one. This voter was issued a ballot. They went in and they filled it out, and boy, they messed it up too. They didn't mess up everything, but they messed up one race in particular when they went in to vote. They think they've done it right. They go in, they put it in the machine, and it goes to the scanner, and then it comes right back out of the scanner. If you talk to that voter and the voter says, I'm not going to vote another ballot, I've done exactly what I wanted to do, then you can override what they've done wrong. It's going to count everything that they did right, but it's not going to count what they did wrong. And all you'd have to do is push the button that says cast ballot here to override that, and it'll go down inside the tub. It's going to count everything that they did right. It's just not going to count what they did wrong. Now, precinct workers, we're going to get back to the machine in just a minute, but for right now, let's get back to that election law book, and we're going back to the table of contents. And on the table of contents, there's some things I want you to look at. On the table of contents, if you look where it says precinct election officer judges, and judges, if you remember, there's always somebody that comes into the precinct election day. Usually it's a guy with his wife, and he walks in, he makes an announcement, and he says, hey, I just want to let you all know I got to go in there and help her vote. I don't know if y'all have ever heard that before. I got to go help her vote or help somebody vote. If somebody's going to go inside the booth with a voter and help them vote, then the voter assistance form has got to properly be filled out. Let's go over to page number 60. And on page number 60, you'll see the sample of the voter assistance. Clerk of the election, again, this is paperwork for you to fill out where you write down the name of the voter, the name of your precinct, and so on. The person who's going to receive assistance takes the oath by reading this in the first box, and then they sign it. If they can't sign it, they make their mark, and that's acceptable if they're unable to read or write. And you'll notice that they're only receiving assistance under certain conditions. For example, the three things right there, it says they have the inability to read English, or they are blind, or they have some type of physical disability. Now, when the voter comes in and they need this assistance, then they can bring just about anybody in with them to assist them, except it can't be their employer, it can't be an agent of their employer, or it can't be a member of their union. But anyone else may assist a voter that's eligible to receive assistance to vote. If they didn't bring anybody with them, it's you two judges that assist. Now, I know that's a little crowded in there, but the judges are the ones who would assist. Judges are the only precinct workers that are allowed to assist voters that are eligible to receive assistance to vote. Judges, if you assist, one judge signs at the left-hand corner down at the bottom, one signs at the right-hand corner. Precinct election officers, this is very important that we get this filled out because this is something that's turned over with our election reports at the end of the day. Grand jury has a chance to review all this stuff. And I don't want you all to get confused about voter assistance when you as precinct workers are just doing your job explaining how everything works. And let me give you some examples. John Doe comes in and says, I want to vote on that E-Slate machine, but I don't understand how it works. Well, any one of you precinct workers can take them through the steps. All you do is put your code in. Here's how you do it. If your code is 1, 2, 3, 4, you dial in 1, then you push enter. Your next code is 2, you dial 2, push enter, and so on. When you get finished putting your code in, then at that time, your ballot will come up, and all you have to do is highlight whoever you want to vote for, and when you get finished, push this red button and American flag will wave at you. Oh, okay, well that sounds pretty simple. You're not staying in there with them, right? You're leaving now. you're gone. If they ask you about how it works with the paper ballot, just say all you have to do is make your box here. You see these boxes, you just darken in the person that you want to vote for. When you get finished, come over to this scanner and set it right there where it says scan your ballot, and that's it. No paperwork's required there because you didn't stay in there with them. But if you're filling it out for them, or if you're putting codes in for them, that's voter assistance, and that's what the difference is. So judges of the elections, make sure that everyone that needs assistance does in fact get assistance, and if they need assistance because they have a problem, make sure that the voter assistance form is properly filled out. Precinct election officer, sheriff. But before I get into the precinct election officer, sheriff, I want to talk again, going back to that E-Slate machine. You know, the E-Slate machine is required by law, and we've had questions ever since we've had it. Why do we have to have two different machines? We have to have a machine that under the Help America Vote Act, this is one of the things that was enacted, that we have this machine in every precinct, and it can be used by any voters as well as the paper ballot. If you have a breakdown with your other machine, this could be a backup system for you to use also. You know, it's not a great backup because it's much, much slower, but you can use it for any voter that comes in to vote. A few years ago, we had a voter that voted in the precinct in one of the counties in Kentucky, and this lady, she went in to vote, and she's been blind her whole life. So she went in and she was so excited about voting on the E-Slate. So she was given her code orally by the precinct worker, and these people are amazing. They can remember stuff. They remember their numbers. She went over and sat down. She put her codes in. She listened to the voice inside the machine, and it said, turn the big wheel. And when she turned the big wheel, she could hear a speaker in there saying, if you'd like to vote for so-and-so, push the enter button. And the enter button also has Braille on it, and it's a special shape. So she'd push that button. She went through the whole process. She did it perfect. When she got finished voting, and she didn't, you know, she couldn't see, so she turned around and started talking to where she hoped the precinct worker would hear her and said, okay, I'm finished now, what do I do next? And the precinct worker said, do you see the American flag waving at you? I only tell this story because precinct workers, make sure that you're aware that anybody that has a disability, make sure that you assist them in any way that you can. And be kind to those who have those disabilities that come in to vote. But that's a great story, and that actually really did happen. It's unbelievable. I talked to her about it later on, and it's a memory that we'll all have for years. Precinct workers, there's 4 precinct workers. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but if they're listening to it and they push the, I guess, what does it tell them to do? It can't say push the red button.
No, it tells them the shape of the red button, and
And then it tells them you're finished?
it calls back everything they voted for, and it says if you're happy with these selections, push the button. And no, you're right. It doesn't say red button. It says push the button, and these buttons have special shapes for those who are sight impaired. If they read Braille, it also has Braille on it.
And it will tell them that they're finished. Like, we get the flag waving, you know, it will say you have now voted or whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to know what to tell
Yeah.
them. to listen.
Yeah. It does tell them that they're finished. And it calls back verbally to them everybody that they voted for. It's a slower process, but that's not a problem. Okay, precinct election officers, we had, yes.
Are we required still to have at least a couple votes on that issue?
Here's the thing, if you vote on it, you can't just do one vote, because then we'll know how a person voted. So if you vote on it, you gotta have more than one.
So, but there's no requirement that during the course.
It's up to the voter, which one they want to vote on.
Yes, sir.
What do you suggest we say to parents who want to have their children come in and help them vote?
Okay. Children under the age of 18 may come in with their parents and observe their voting. That's a state law. They may come in. However, If you bring a 5-year-old in there and they mess up your ballot, they mess up the tally here, they push the red button too quick, there's no way that you can help them figure that out. They've lost their vote, especially with the E-slate. You can reissue spoiled ballots, but there's no return on this thing. Yes, ma'am.
Just gonna say, Westport precinct, we started a couple of years ago, just saying, you wanna do a paper ballot or you want the electronic machine?
Yeah.
That's all we're saying, a lot of people do the electronic machine.
Yeah.
And we don't say it's for people who are disabled or anything like that.
Yeah.
We just say it's electronic.
Well, yeah. Okay, precinct workers, getting back into some of the election laws. As Julie was bringing up earlier, we have some changes on electioneering. We're going to need to cover that. We have challengers. We're going to need to cover that. But if you'll back at the table of contents under section number 4, there's the special duties of the precinct election officer sheriff. Now again, as many election schools as I've done, I remember one election school where I'd gotten to the point where I'm at right now, and I talked about the judges and the clerk. Then I started talking about the sheriff. And this lady on the front row, she said, "Now, Roger, I just want to know one thing. Which one of us out here is in charge?" And I told her, I said, the person that's in charge is the county clerk. The county clerk is in charge of every one of your precincts and the Board of Elections. So if you thought that you were the boss out at the precinct, you're not the boss. You're just part of the system. Precinct election officer sheriff. The sheriff of the election maintains law and order out at the precinct, and also sheriff of the election, you need to enforce the provisions of electioneering, and that's what we really need to talk about is those provisions of electioneering on page number 46. On page number 46, you're going to see some special provisions of electioneering which has changed as Julie brought forth. First of all, I want you all to understand that it's not a free-for-all out at the precinct on Election Day. You know, there was a breakdown in the law where that there was a challenge to electioneering on private property. We're not going to go to private property. We cannot enforce that. So if there's something going on private property, that's something that is under challenge right now. So electioneering is 300 foot of the entrance to the polling place on public property, just like it always was. Nothing's changed. Also, precinct election officer sheriff, remember that maintaining law and order out at the precinct means that you make sure that there's not any unnecessary conversation concerning their support of any candidate or party that's on the ballot this time. You know, you have that sneaky person that comes in and says, "I'm a blankety blank party and I'm going all the way with a straight ticket." Or, "I'm going to have to vote for so-and-so for such and such race because I remember what they said the other night on TV." This is electioneering. Precinct election officer, sheriff, and all precinct workers, keep your ears open. The other thing that's a nuisance and a disturbance, yes, sir? Well, the polling place would be considered public property for that day. Now, the other thing that's a big nuisance is my buddy, my cell phone. I love my cell phone. Probably most of you do. You've learned to love it over the years because it does all kinds of special things. If you have a voter that comes in to vote and they're gabbing away on their cell phone, that's not good, is it? That causes a problem. The other night I was doing election school and one of the precinct workers thought that I told them after the school, "So we got to take everybody's cell phone away from them?" And I said, no. You just need to tell them to put their cell phone away. As Julie did when she started the meeting, she asked everybody to turn their cell phone on silent. And if a voter comes in and they're gabbing away on the phone, tell them to put that cell phone away and hold on to it until they're finished. No pictures, no recordings, nothing going on. It can be very rude. So just tell them to turn it down on silent and put it in their pocket or purse until they leave the precinct. Precinct election officer, sheriff, you also make sure that no voters vote after 6 o'clock p.m. But if voters are in line at 6, they will be allowed to vote. Now go back to the table of contents, and some of the things that we haven't covered, I'm going to just hit on real quickly here. If the name is not on the precinct roster book, guys, make sure that you look at your supplemental roster and call the county clerk's office if there's somebody that shows up and their name is not there. As Julie said, you have your provisional ballot bag. I always tell workers it's full of snakes and stuff, so don't open it up. This precinct provisional bag is required by federal law. Frankly, Kentucky's law is so good, we really don't need this here. And the reason I say that is we have a statewide voter registration system. We're hooked up. We can see what they're doing in any county in the state of Kentucky. We know whether somebody's registered to vote. And not only that, but we have all the voter registration cards, and then Frankfort has copies of all that stuff there in Frankfort. So if somebody comes in and they tell you their name's not on the ballot, the proper procedure is not to get this out. This is not the right procedure. The right procedure for this is take this sheet of paper out there and fill it out at the beginning of the day and end of the day that you didn't use it. And if you think you're going to have to use it, you have a very long conversation with your county clerk or county board of elections. I doubt if they're going to give you permission to do it. Also, precinct workers, you have to account for all the ballots that are in that ballot bag at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. You have an accountability statement that you have to fill out. It's real simple. Precinct election officers, make sure that you keep everything confidential in the precinct. You know how important that is. And we've already talked a little bit about the disability. Just make sure you're aware if somebody needs assistance because they have a special disability. And then we get to the section called challengers, and I'd like for everybody to turn over to page number 23. On page 23, the section about challengers, actually that's not page 23, that's section 23, page 42. And on page 42, it's really cut and dry about challengers. And since we don't have them that often, I don't want you to be mad about challengers, because under Kentucky law, we can have challengers. They serve a purpose, and here's what they can do. If you'll read there on page number 42, and this is one time I'm going to read it to you, is challengers must provide written appointment to the precinct election officers on demand. They're going to be certified by the County Board of Elections. They'll have a piece of paper showing you that. You can ask them for it. Challengers may question the eligibility of a voter who presents himself at the polls, and the reason that they can challenge somebody is the voter is not duly registered in the precinct. That's what they think. So they can make that challenge. The voter is not a resident in the precinct and is not a registered voter. The voter is a convicted felon and has not had their rights restored. Or the voter is not the person that they claim they are. If the challenger attempts to challenge a person's right to vote, he must explain his challenge only to the precinct election officer, not to the voter. So challengers, do not have conversations with the voter and say, man, you don't even live out there. That's not your job. Your job is to notify the precinct election officer. The challenger will then need to sign an oath of voter, which is SBE 32. It's easy to find. There's a copy of it here in the book. You'll have plenty of copies of it. And the challenger will sign the bottom portion of the oath and state his or her reason for challenging the voter's right to vote in the precinct. Challengers are the only persons permitted to have a checkoff list in the form of a paper. Now remember this part. Or a cell phone, or picture phones, or computers, or electronic devices to record the identity of a voter within the voting room. So challenger has those special privileges in the precinct, but not to cause a disturbance. Challengers may come and go from the voting room throughout the day. They're the only person that can go out and get lunch if they want to, because you all are stuck there the whole day. Now, I've told you what they can do, and they can't do anything else. Yes, sir.
When do they make the challenge?
They make the challenge when the voter comes in and walks in to the clerk, and the clerk's looking up their name. That's when they make the challenge. They can't make it after the voter gets finished voting.
Do they sign the book, they can still challenge?
Oh, yes, sir. They can still challenge a voter up until the point that they are going to go vote. Okay. This is what, yes, ma'am.
And where should this person sit?
The person can sit right there with you.
If
whole
they,
day.
if they want to sit at that table, they can sit at that table. They don't have to, but they certainly can. And here's the thing that I need to caution you about, is this, if you can kind of remember, challengers have so many more rights, and it's written out right here in law. And you don't have to like it, I don't have to like it, nobody has to like it. I don't like the fact that I can't speed anytime I want to, because I love to drive fast. I don't have to like it,
I've seen that.
but I usually obey that. This, you don't have an option, you have to obey it. And they can, there is a reason that both parties have assigned challengers in these voting locations. They are here. I don't know if they'll be here next year. The one thing that I'm going to stress and stress and stress and stress, they are not to engage that voter, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. They are never, ever to have a conversation, discuss, challenge, make any direct contact with that voter. If they do that, I need to know they need to be escorted from the precinct, and they can't work for 5 years. That is, it's written out very specifically. Yes, ma'am.
So, are they allowed to, hi Joe, how are you doing today? And all
They are
that,
not.
when they come up to sign the book?
They are not. They are not allowed to engage that voter in any way, shape, or form.
And it
Period.
says they cannot talk to the voter. It says that. Now, let's go back. Yes, sir.
If they violate that, do we call the clerk and issue a warning?
I'm gonna tell you right now what to do.
And
Because-
if you have a voter, a challenger, you will have these laws. It's in your book, but I also have them highlighted, and they will be in your precinct bag if you have a challenger assigned to your precinct, okay? And the challengers, by the same token, they got the same exact paper. And the reason is now everybody knows what the situation is. Everybody knows the rules. Nobody can say, well, I wasn't aware, so.
Yes, sir.
Challenger is specific to a precinct, not to anything in the whole county.
The party assigns challengers. As long as that party assigns a challenger, that challenger can be assigned to several precincts. They can float in and out of your precinct all day. They can go to another precinct as long as they are assigned. And I know who they're assigned to.
Make sure you see credentials.
Now, this is a general election, so it's the party preference that's done from the being like in the primary.
Well, as far as voters go, that is correct. But trust me, those challengers know what party each voter is, or I should say, what they're looking for. And they can challenge either party, depending on the information, and I'm not privy to that. But they are not, the voters are not a party, let me think. The election isn't voter or party specific. The challengers are. Does that make sense? They're assigned by their party. Voters,
Challenge the other party. They can challenge the voter from the other party.
Oh, sure, they
they
can challenge
can.
anybody.
I don't know what their agenda is that day. I don't know what,
They couldn't do that stuff.
well, challengers have a pretty wide berth. They can do, but I can't speak to what they will or won't do because I do not have their agenda for that day.
You had a question?
My question is, when you mentioned that they can't do electioneering, but if they know somebody that came into the precinct that's it, I mean, are they allowed to talk to people other than their challenges? Or are they gonna be sitting quiet?
They cannot engage a voter, whether they're Republican, Democrat, anybody that walks in there. The only people that they can engage are the precinct officers.
So they shouldn't be talking to anybody else?
No.
Okay.
They can talk to you all. Boy, it's a pretty day out there, isn't it? Yes, ma'am.
But if a challenger is assigned to the precinct where they vote, obviously they're gonna know a lot of people who come in that door. So they still have the rule, but they cannot talk to any voter.
That's
Walks
correct.
that door, goes in there.
And get the book out and read it to them.
They still cannot speak to the voter even if they're challenging. Just remember, it's really simple. This is not difficult.
Let me finish this part up, and then I'll answer some more questions if this doesn't clear up what your next questions are. In the bottom section, challengers cannot electioneer. If they're electioneering, they're out. They cannot campaign on the behalf of their party. They cannot handle any of your election materials, except for the signing of that oath of voters when they challenge a voter. That's the only thing they can touch that is any election material. They cannot intimidate, harass, or otherwise any voter who's been challenged or any precinct officer. And they only can behave in a manner that is good. They cannot disrupt activities, or they cannot attempt to interfere with the proper conduct of an election. And what can you do about it if they do? A precinct election officer may order the challenger to leave the precinct after one warning. Now this, I'm reading right out of the law here. If the individual violates any of these terms, a challenger who is ordered from the polling place shall be prohibited from serving as a challenger for 5 years, blah, blah, blah. Remember, precinct workers, what you need to remember on challengers is if somebody gets out of hand, you can kick them out. And if they have a problem, call the county clerk's office. We will assist you. Yes, ma'am. It says they cannot talk to voters. Up in the top section.
If you look at, I don't have your all's book, but number 3 under duties of a challenger, if the challenger challenges a person's right to vote, the following procedure must be followed. Read on, it says, the challenger never directly challenges the voter. They don't engage them. They just don't.
I'm telling you that I am not the person that makes the laws. I'm not the person who's telling you that a challenger can't talk and say, how's the weather? But it specifically does indeed say that they can't talk to the voters. You all take that the way it says. The way I see it is they can't talk to anybody except the precinct workers. Yes, sir.
If they do engage the voter at that point, is it null and void as far as the challenge?
No.
I believe that wouldn't negate that challenge.
You just need to give them that first warning. They do it again, they're out.
Okay, even if we throw them out, is there still a challenge at that point?
Well, if it's already filled out, it's going to be filled out, yes, sir.
We're sitting there and he says, no, I challenge this person, and the guy, he doesn't live in this precinct, all right? And he said, the guy says, well, I do live in this precinct, and he turns to him and says, no, you don't, all right? That's engaging the voter at that point.
Challenger's leaving, the oath of voters is void at that point, sir, because you did not finish the process. You did not finish the process.
He should be able to go ahead and vote.
If he's properly registered, of course. Yes, sir.
I'm the target of a lot of this conversation.
We're sorry.
And last spring at the election, many people came in to me and asked me, Alex Weather, what is your role? What is your job? I do not think it would be reasonable for me to say,
Sure.
Technically, I have broken the law as you have explained it here.
You just disclaim yourself from talking to them.
I know, but technically, according to the absoluteness of the law, I have broken the law by saying to them, I cannot speak to you, I am a challenge. That is violation of the law.
Well, if you're,
Now, we need to get some horse sense in here. We need to have some practical, what is the reasonable expectation of a challenger to be able to say, it's a lovely day, isn't it?
Well, I will tell you, Tom, that my position is pretty inflexible. You don't engage the voter.
Fair enough, I'm all right with that.
Okay.
But you're saying we can't tell them, we can't help them?
I think we will go to the letter of the law that that challengers do not engage the voter.
if you want to bring, common sense into it, that's the way to bring it in. And simply tell the poll worker, if anybody comes in and wants to talk to you, poll worker, please tell them that I'm not allowed. Tell him that Tom's not allowed.
I think that's perfectly fine, and I think that would make it reasonable.
Yeah, yes, sir.
In his case here, he's not engaging the voter's engaging him.
That's right.
And he can just tell him, I can't talk to you. So that should clear it off right there.
It could, but if you just, one of the poll workers can do it for him. There was a question over here.
That was my question. If someone engages them, then we are allowed to tell that voter, yes, he is not allowed to speak to you because he's a child. So please respect.
Now, I'm not gonna back up on any of this stuff, guys, but just use common sense. Yes. Yes, that's right.
It does not have to be an adversarial day. It does not. You know, it really,
I hope not.
Well, it was. It does not have to be that way. We've got clear-cut law. If you do not have a challenger in your precinct, let's move on. If you do have a challenger in your precinct, that challenger has been armed with their rights, and the precinct election officers will be armed with their rights. Everybody will be on the same page. What I was trying to say is this is not rocket science. It's laid out in the law very specifically. There's not a lot of room for wiggling in here. It's black and white. Just read it, take care of business. Let's let the election happen. Let's protect everybody's constitutional right, and let's follow the law. That's it. Please do not make it an adversarial day. I know people are ticked off. I can't help it. You can't help it. They can't help it. They are there. And if it's not this person, it's going to be this person. Believe you me, if they want challengers in that precinct, they're going to find them. So let everybody do their job. Let's make the election day work as smoothly as possible. Everybody's working for a common goal to put on a good election. These are people that live next door to you. They are people that live in your county, and that by itself deserves some respect. Yes.
I think the most important thing to understand is that we, the challengers, are sworn election officers just like anybody else. And I clearly understand the law. I don't want to be barred from being a poll challenger because I said hello to somebody that engaged with me first. That's my only, I want to be sure that we have, as you're saying, make it a fair election. That's all we're asking. That's all the answer. But I don't want to have the fear of being exposed, kicked out of the booth or out of the precinct because I said hello to someone who engaged me. That's the only thing I want to be certain, that the judges have a lot of responsibility on their shoulders as well.
The way, well, first of all, I think we need to use common sense. And the way that I read this on page 41, it says that the challenger shall not talk directly to the voter. It sounds to me like we're only talking about the challenged voter.
No, ma'am. No. And not to be rude, we don't get options to have common sense when it pertains to Kentucky law.
Okay. Well, I just, it sounds like here is like we're talking about.
No. Let's move on because I think
Hey,
you all are interjecting your
one last
personal
question.
feelings.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
move on.
Is there a limit to the number of challenges they can
No, sir. No, they could challenge anybody. Yeah, but you know what? If it's that kind of silliness, we're going to kick them out. If they're challenging every Tom, Dick, and Harry walks in the door. Okay, precinct workers. They won't wear a name tag. They'll have credentials showing who they are.
Tom,
Here's a yes or no answer on the issue this gentleman raised. Are we going to abide by the law? which
yes,
says
yes.
you may not talk to anybody?
We abide by Kentucky law. Let's move on.
Okay, precinct workers, precinct election officers, sheriff. Again, let's move on to what you're having to do as the sheriff of the election. You need to maintain law and order at the precinct. And one of the things and privileges that you have that none of the other precinct workers have is you are making a report that's turned over to the grand jury. And I want all of the precinct election officers, sheriffs, and all precinct workers to go over to page 65, and you're going to see a sample of the precinct sheriff's post-election report. A lot of stuff that you all kept talking about here, you can itemize all this stuff on the sheriff's report. There's an example here on page 65 of what this sheriff thought that they should put on their report. This sheriff said that John Doe was observed handing out campaign literature and waiting in line, and I informed him that that's not permitted, and he immediately quit doing it. There's no other violations, and they signed it down at the bottom of the form. If you need more room, there's plenty of more room on the back, or you can attach another form to it. Precinct election officer, sheriff, we have to have this back from every single sheriff in the county. This is turned over to the grand jury. All of the election materials is at the hands of the grand jury for them to review after the election. If they see any irregularities, they can meet and decide whether or not they want to prosecute or investigate to prosecute anything that happened during the election day. Precinct election officer, sheriff, you need to make sure also that any voters that are standing in line at 6 do get to vote. No voters can get in line after 6, but voters that are in line at 6 o'clock, they will be allowed to vote. When the last person has voted, then you need to run everybody out of the precinct, of course, except you all and the challengers if they want to be there. And at this time, you need to very carefully close down the polls. Closing down the polls, again, both of the machines have a screen telling you what you're supposed to do next. This one says add voter, and then there's a button that says close polls. If we want to close the polls and it's time to close the polls, all we have to do is we push that button that says close the polls. When we push the button that says close the polls, then it will a reading will come up, and then this one will say caution, caution, it's too early to close the polls. So you can't do it too early. So then you would put in your secret code, which is once you put in your secret code, that screen says please wait. At that point on the screen, it's going to ask you to print your precinct tally, and it's also got a report on there of how many people voted. If you had 5, 6, 7, 20, 100, whatever, it's going to be right here on the screen. So you push the button that says print tally. We're going to print that 3 different times. We're going to print it one time, and we're just going to wait for it to print out. And when it prints out that first time, the screen will come back up and it'll say print tally. So we're going to push the button again. And then we're going to push the button again after that. Once we've done it 3 times, then at that point, when it's finished, the green paper tape, you just simply tear it off the machine just like that. The very last copy that printed out, of course, the other 2 copies also, all 4 precinct workers sign it, post it on the door or a conspicuous place at the precinct so that people can come by and see what the election results were. Then we take the other tapes, the 2, and we fold them up just like this, and we put them in that special envelope that says precinct tally from the E-Slate. And then on the side of the machine, we have a red seal that we break. We just break the red seal and open up the little door, and we pull out this little card. We need to have 2 cards from every precinct and 2 sets of paper tapes. Take this card now and put it in that special envelope where your election tally is for the E-slate. And then at that time, all you have to do is unplug everything, take all the cords apart, and put this unit back in that black bag. Then on the E-scan, you would do the same thing, read the screen, it'll tell you what to do. In the back of the E-scan, if you're ready to close the polls, there's a red button in the back. You just push it, and when you push it, it's going to ask you for your secret password to close the polls, which is all ones. And then there's a button that comes up that says close the polls. And this one says, oh, it's too early to close the polls. So I'm going to have to put in another code. I can't tell you what this code is. Once you do that, then a little hourglass comes up on the machine, and it says that it's ready to prepare the report. You just push the button that says continue, and at that time, the hourglass comes back up again, and then you're going to have a screen that comes up that says print the tally. You're going to print the tally 3 different times. When you print the tally 3 different times, you're going to take the paper tapes off of here. And remember, the paper tape that comes off of this unit is going to be white. So you just print it 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. That 3rd time you tear off the last copy and post it in a conspicuous place for voter or people that come by that want to see what the election results are. And then the other tally, you sign them just like we did on the green one. And then on the side of the machine over here, you have that seal that you break, the red seal, just like we did on the other one. You open up the little door and you push the button and that little card comes out. Don't do that until it's finished printing all of its reports. Then you pull out the little card, you take those 2 paper tapes, all 4 precinct workers sign them, you fold it up just like this, and you put them in that special envelope for your election results for the E-scan. Then you know you're not going to get inside the tub here, it's sealed up, so at that time you just unplug it and you fill out the bottom portion of your verification sheet on both machines. It's self-explanatory. Then take your power supply. Are we putting it back in the machine? We can't. So we're going to put it in the bag. Okay. And we put the power supply in the bag, and then the lid that just goes on the top of the tub, like this, and then you have the key where you lock it back. And you're finished, and this question always comes up. Who brings it back? 2 judges. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Julie. I'll answer any questions y'all may have. Thank you very much and have a great election here in Oldham County.
Thank you.